Welcome to episode 6 in our series of webinars on enabling and supporting remote work with Microsoft 365. We get to sit down with members of our Microsoft product teams and talk about really great topics like the one today. We're going to talk about how you can ensure your employees are able to work not just remotely, but securely. We're also going to discuss some great new advances in security for hardware, as well as some really cool Teams peripherals that will help your employees to more easily collaborate and stay productive. So with that, I'd like to have my guests introduce themselves. Frank, I'm going to start with you. Introduce yourself and take a moment. Tell us a little bit about you and your role.
Sure. So thanks, Stephen. Thanks for giving me the time to come and talk about Surface and security. I'm Frank Buchholz. I head up the IT Pro and developer audience marketing for Surface, and it's an exciting time to be able to talk about the security that we actually bring to Surface from essentially from the chip all the way up to the cloud, and the level of investment that we make in order to make sure that the devices we provide to our end users are as secure as possible.
Awesome. Thank you. Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, so my name is Alexander Dale. I am a program manager on the platform security team on our enterprise and security team. And one of the areas of focus that I have is how to enable the latest and greatest security features on brand new Windows 10 hardware. So super excited to talk to you all about that today.
Awesome. And Sandhya.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm Sandhya Rao, and I'm a principal product manager in Microsoft Teams, and I work on the devices team. So I work with peripherals as well as Android-based appliances like IP phones and collaboration bars.
Awesome. Thank you. So, Sandhya, work from home really changes everything. It is all about how to create a great experience, which helps to foster collaboration, and the right device. And I loved how you put this the other day, can create a peace of mind that I don't need to worry about how I look and how I sound and am I coming through and all that, that just being able to go click and jump into a meeting really allows you to focus on what's important, which is connections, which when you're connecting, that will foster collaboration and creativity, which is the goal when we're not able to do those meetings in person. So you're going to talk today about Teams and some really cool portfolios of devices that we have to enable people to do exactly this.
That's right. So obviously everybody is working from home these days, and we have a lot of meetings and calls, and they're all day long sometimes. So it can be pretty grueling. Folks in the background, maybe you've got kids or pets or even a lawn mower outside, or police cars if you live in a city. So having the right peripherals really does matter to ensure that you're being heard and also seen when it comes to video these days. So in Teams, we've been working for a number of years with Skype for Business and now Teams on a set of highly curated peripherals. They are certified either for Skype for Business or for Teams. And we have a number of them. In terms of headsets, they come in all different prices. You can get wired headsets, you can get wireless headsets, depending on what you're looking for. And in terms of form factors as well, there's a wide range. So you've got,
Yeah, I was just going to say, why don't we take a look at some headsets? So let's talk about what's new in headsets and the integration that we now have that allows you to access Teams directly.
Yeah, so, in terms of the wide range, they come in, it really depends on the personal preference. Today I'm wearing a behind the neck in-ear headset. I use these all the time, all day long, even very comfortable for me. Others who might want to be a little bit more mobile, maybe you're walking around the house, maybe you're not always stationary in one place. You might want something like these, which is the Evolve 65T from Jabra. They're in-ear, wireless earbuds. We also have over-the-ear. So a lot of folks prefer the comfort of over-the-ear. Here I've got the Jabra Evolve 265. These are brand new. They just launched. This is not only over the ear, but it comes with a mic boom, which means that if you're in sort of an open area, let's say you don't have your own office, maybe you're working from the kitchen table and people are, using the faucet in the background and whatnot. This will really kind of weed out a lot of that sound. It's got great noise canceling features as well.
And that has a dedicated Teams button on it. Can you show what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So this is the dedicated Teams button right here. Hopefully folks at home can see that. And what that does is a number of things to help you be a little bit more productive and also just give you a little bit more ease of mind while you're working throughout the day. So for example, let's say you're browsing or in some other app on your PC, you can press that Teams button and it brings Teams right to the forefront. So, if you kind of remember, oh, I got to chat to somebody, you could just press that. Teams is right there in front of you, and then you can go about your business in Teams. In addition, what I really like is when you have meetings. So how many times do you realize, oh gosh, my meeting has started, I'm a little bit late, and you're fumbling, looking for your calendar invite, looking for the link to get into the in meeting. What this Teams button does is you press it and it will take you right to your pre-join screen for your meeting. So you just press it, you can make sure that your video is okay and everything, and then get right into your meeting. So it really cuts down the time and sort of, that stressful nature right before a meeting.
It's one less thing you got to think about. I'm going to switch over here. I'm going to show you. I have a set here of the Jabra headphones. I like these, especially when I'm traveling, because the bottoms stay together. But these are also noise canceling, which is great. So it means when I'm on a call, I'm walking through an airport, everybody can hear me. And when I travel, I'm a big fan of the speaker puck. What I really like about this one is twofold. Number one, it does come with the kickstand, which allows it to stand up, and the USB dongle as well as the power. And what's great is if I walk into a conference room and I'm doing a meeting with some engineers back in Redmond and a customer, I can just plug that into my laptop. Now everybody can hear. And it also doubles as a really nice speaker when I'm traveling, when I want to play music in the hotel room. So I find that those are really great. So what's nice is those are, hands-free and super ergonomic. I'm having some problems with my words today. Ergonomic. So you have one that you really like. You have which one? The Sennheiser, is it?
That's right. So this is right here, the Sennheiser SP30T. This one is a little bit newer than the one you have. It was just recently launched. It's Teams certified, which means it's got that Teams button right here at the bottom for quick, easy access into Teams. And, this is also great for me, even when I work from home, because sometimes, your ears do get tired having a headset on all the time. So I switch to this often.
And I'm assuming the audio quality on that's pretty good because it's Sennheiser, which is great.
That's for sure.
Let's talk webcams. I mean, a lot of folks have webcams built into their laptops. I have one on, on my laptop, which is great, but I really want to make sure I get a super clear picture because being able to connect and look at people and have them look back at you is really important. I'm using a Logitech. This is the 4K camera, so it's got a really great picture and I'm hardwired in, so I get a really good connection, and it supports Windows Hello, which is great. So I'm able to put my laptop off to the side, close it, and log in directly through this. So what about webcams? How do we make sure, and kind of, some are really expensive and not what folks need. Some are super cheap and not going to be as good as your laptop. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on webcams.
Yeah, so, webcams are really important these days if you wanted to have great video. Some PCs you can get away with, but a lot of PCs, the camera just isn't that great. So we do have Yealink as well as Logitech offerings on our site, which I think you showed to our audience, office.com/Teams devices. And it is really important. And, just even if you don't have a webcam, I think just small tips and tricks like making sure you're using great lighting. Teams has a great feature called background blur, which we're not using today because we're showing devices, but I really do use it quite often when it's a little bit messy behind me.
Yeah. What else do we have? I know you were going to show off some new things like video phones that are now becoming available and that we have.
That's right. So, I think working from home more and more, you're trying to not only be on calls, but also you might also need to work or collaborate with folks. And so, what I have here is one of the latest IP phone team certified devices that was launched just last month. This is the Lenovo ThinkSmart, and it's got our great Teams, IP phone. App on it, and essentially it gives you really easy access to all of your calls and meetings, and with one click you can just join into your meeting. And this is a video phone, so it gives really high quality audio and video, and I can put it right here and talk to folks on my team, or with whoever I'm working with, and really free up my laptop to open up the PowerPoint or the Excel or other documents that I need to reference while I'm talking to them. So it's a really great way to kind of divvy up the work and have a really dedicated calling and meeting device on your desk. And I did want to just share one last thing. This is really hot off the press.
Yeah, please.
So thought it would be fun to share with your audience. So our latest Teams certified partner is Bose. And this is the latest Bose headset. Yeah, and this, it's getting certified in June, which is very exciting. And it also comes with a Teams button, and it's super comfortable over the head. You can wear it all day, and I know, a lot of folks just really love the brand. So definitely look out for these coming soon.
That's awesome. I got a question on Twitter that said, I have to support an executive with a home office, so I'd like to kind of give them something a little bit more so that when they're talking with other executives, it shows off, not quite going to the Surface Hub level. So what do we have for executives that have a home office where they kind of want a next level collaboration station, let's say?
That's a great question. I wish I had one here, but we have something called the collaboration bars. So we just certified a collaboration bar that comes from Yealink. It's the VC210. And what that is essentially a small bar that you can put on any display. You can put it on your TV. You can put it on your monitor. You can get a dedicated touch display, which is a little bit more expensive. But if you're talking about an executive, it makes for a great dedicated Teams calling and meeting and collaborative device that they can put in their home office. They can run all their meetings from there, and they can again free up their PC to do other workloads that are important.
That's awesome. So where can folks go to learn about all this? aka.ms/Teams devices, and I think we covered it all. Excellent. Thank you, Sandhya. This was great. Alex, let's talk about our folks who have moved from a Windows 7 PC to a Windows, and then installed Windows 10 on it, which is a great move to get more secure, especially if you're using, newer hardware. But last year, we kind of did something that folks did not expect, and that is we introduced a whole new type of PC for business called Secure Core PCs. It's a brand new category of modern device. And it offers the most secure Windows experience out of the box. Basically, from the moment you hit power to the moment you log into Windows, it removes all of those different touch points and gaps. So what is a secure PC, and why is it so much more secure?
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, I'm really, really excited and grateful that I get to talk to you all about this program today, because I'm a little bit biased as a security guy, but I really do truly think this is a game changer and one of the most kind of exciting programs that Microsoft has done in the security space in a long time. So just like you mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the philosophy behind Secured Core, where it came from, what it does. Then I want to actually show off some really high profile attacks that have been in the news, in the last few years and weeks.
Yeah.
And then we can talk kind of about the pillars of Secured Core and what really makes a device Secured Core. So when we were doing some kind of research and analysis, we realized that today's workplace is, changing, and this whole situation of work from home really underscores that. But what we realized is that you really need kind of an integrated security solution that starts from the device itself. So no longer can we, leave security kind of higher up the stack to just programs running in the operating system, but we actually need to take that even lower. So we need to take advantage of new hardware advancements in these brand new Windows 10 devices that allow you to move the protection down the stack. So attackers are very clever. They've realized that if they're able to find a bug or a vulnerability in the very early boot code, like you were mentioning, something we call the firmware, then they can actually propagate that up the stack. And some of the other security investments that we've had in the past won't necessarily detect that. So we said, how do we bundle all of this goodness together, not have to have the user worry about how to turn things on, just have them enabled right out of the gate, and really deliver an experience that protects you from the moment the device boots up all the way until it's running. So awesome. If you can see this slide that I'm projecting right here, this is something that was called WannaCry. And this was a really high profile ransomware style attack that really kind of swept the world a couple of years ago. It infected hundreds of thousands of PCs and was actually based on a kernel vulnerability, which could be used kind of to remotely access and control a machine. So really kind of the worst case, scary hack that you can imagine. And it worked really well. But what we noticed was when we were doing some investigation and analysis into this, virtualization, which is one of the key technologies of a secured core PC, virtualization and something called hypervisor enforced code integrity would have actually protected you against this if you were running on a secured core PC. So this is massive because it actually would have prevented that kind of kernel exploit from even occurring, since virtualization keeps everything kind of isolated off into its own little world so that it can't grow beyond that. So really interesting exploit. It was based off something called Eternal Blue, which is really interesting to read about if you're a security geek like me. But really interesting. VBS would, fully protect you against this kind of thing. So super exciting. Another attack that we just had to show off because it actually just became news in the last week was something called ThunderSpy. And ThunderSpy was discovered by these really clever university researchers who realized that with a device that they had physical access to, less than 5 minutes, they could pop off the back panel, have a little device that you can easily get to flash some firmware on the back of it, and then essentially use that to exploit a vulnerability to get past the lock screen. So we sometimes call these attacks evil maid style attacks because, if someone has access to your device for a few minutes, they could potentially, pop in a USB key, or in this case, pop off the back plate, and then actually have access to your device and get past the lock screen. So again, we wanted to dig into this and do some analysis and see if these direct memory access style attacks would still apply. And again, secured core PCs have something called IOMMU, or Input Output Memory Managed Unit. And what that does is it basically prevents any direct memory access device from accessing memory when your device is locked. So you're actually protected against these types of attacks with a secured core PC.
We've heard from customers that secure core PCs offer benefits from procurement and management. We also now talk about the need to move away from what you know to what you have as we take a look at, Windows Hello and biometrics. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and how we helped them to get these devices and to get these out to their customers easily.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, so there's kind of 4 pillars I like to talk about with a secured core PC. Like I mentioned, we want to start with that hardware root of trust. So this is hardware-backed, basically trust generation that as soon as the device boots up, you're getting that firmware very low-level protection. When we move that up the stack, we've added a bunch of investments into protections against unverified code from running, kind of like I mentioned with the WannaCry attack. And then, of course, Windows Hello, identity protection. When you're working from home, we're using this all the time. We want to make sure that, you can't be compromised from any external threats. So those are really the kind of 4 pillars of a secured core PC. And just like you mentioned, we've heard again and again from customers that, not only do the security benefits really help out here, But the fact that this is automatically enabled off the factory floor, these settings are all on by default. You don't have to spend all of this time kind of mapping, hey, does this hardware support this feature? If it does, how do I turn it on? What kind of registry keys do I need to set? You don't have to worry about that anymore because we've worked with our partners to make sure that that comes enabled out of the factory floor. So with that, Stephen, I want to turn it back to you and let you kind of showcase some of the secured core PCs.
Yeah, I have a few of them here. So I want to start with the HP Dragonfly. I want to thank the folks at HP for sending me this device. I've been using it now for the past few weeks and absolutely love it. What's really nice about this one is it is a cool 2-in-1. But what's great is this has Sure Sense, Sure Click, and Sure Start. So this uses AI to identify and quarantine attacks, and it has a hardware enforced security as well as a self-healing BIOS. It has an integrated privacy screen. So what's really cool is if I hit F12, the screen itself will dim a little bit. And if you're looking at it from the side, you're not able to see what is on my screen, which I love. It has a built-in fingerprint reader as well as supporting Windows Hello. Bang Olufsen speakers, completely flips over, and the Dragonfly is actually made from ocean recycled plastic. So if you're trying to do something nice for the environment, this is a great, super thin, really nice PC. And thanks again for the folks at HP for giving me one to use. From Dell, we have, of course, our 2-in-1s, which is great. Really nice keyboard. But what I love about this one is they put the fingerprint reader right here on the back, so it's super easy to get to. So that way when you go to log in, you have that. You also have a digital privacy panel option with this one. And for those of you who do not like a 2-in-1 or a flip or like a larger laptop, we also have the 7400 here. What I really like about this one is they have put the fingerprint reader right there on the power button, which is great. For those who are Lenovo fans, I know the new X1 Carbon, that also has a privacy guard. Both the Dragonfly and the Lenovo have a built-in shutter thing so that you can slide it over and so people can't view you from your webcam when it's not running. They call it the Think Shutter. It's a physical camera block. And of course, Hello and fingerprint reader. So this secure portfolio is growing, and we're finding more and more of these. Panasonic, Dynabook, Getac, and of course Microsoft Surface are all part of this. So it's not just about going to Windows 10. That's great. But if you're really looking for folks that are out in the field, that travel a lot, that have a potential of having a laptop stolen, that are connecting to networks that are not necessarily friendly networks, that are going through public Wi-Fi, things like that, giving them a secure PC is just one more thing that you can do to ensure that. So, Alex, where do we want to send folks?
Yeah, so you can go to aka.ms/secured core PC, and secured with a D.
Thank you for joining us today, Alex. Frank, how we doing?
Hey, we're doing great, Stephen. I want to point out that I really like your shirt that you're wearing today, by the way.
This is an Ignite special. So for those of you who visited the Surface area at Ignite, right behind our Microsoft 365 booth, Frank was there and we were showing off all the latest stuff. Now we're going to talk about Surface products and what we have done to not just kind of evolve security by moving to UEFI, but the industry standards that we've created and how we've made it easier for IT pros to keep things like firmware updated and create this great root of trust. So why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. So on the Surface side, we've been going through some iterations from the beginning of Surface, from when we produced the very first Surface RT and then started to produce the Surface Pro product line. And we decided that at the time when we started to produce the Surface Pro 4, which is about 3 years ago, that we would decide that if you look at a Surface device, there's essentially two operating systems running on it. There's the Windows 10 Pro, over 1 billion device installations provided throughout the world across many different platforms, and that's the operating system of trust that we put on all of our Surface devices. But we also put a UEFI. That's a modern version of the BIOS. That's essentially where you have what talks to your firmware, what talks to the processor, what talks to your hard drive, what talks to your USB ports that could provide vulnerabilities on the device. And so for that UEFI, we decided to take that UEFI in-house. Now, a number of other vendors still use, or they use a UEFI from a company called America Megatrends. We decided, hey, we're an operating system company. We can actually produce other things like that. And so we took it in-house, and the Windows team actually helped us produce a UEFI for Surface. But we did one step further. We actually made that UEFI open source. And so we put it out. So if you go out and Bing Project MU, you'll actually see the open source version of the UEFI that we in Surface actually use. Now, the value of having our own UEFI is that we can actually use tools like Windows Update to update the entire device at this point. So not only can we update the operating system and the drivers that are inside of it, but we can also update the firmware on the device. And the value of doing a firmware update is through Windows Update for Business is that we can proactively, using the intelligent security graph that's built into Microsoft 365 and being able to use things like Defender ATP, we can see other problems that are occurring throughout the world within Microsoft so we can quickly patch and push out updates to protect your device all the way down to the firmware level. And now in a unique situation that actually happened a few years ago is the issue of Spectre and Meltdown. Spectre and Meltdown was a vulnerability that a Google engineer before Christmas time a couple years ago actually found, and it was a vulnerability on every processor that was essentially made. It was on Intel, AMD, even NVIDIA. It turns out that they all use somewhat of the same architecture in order to build silicon on the processors, and there was a vulnerability that was found on it. That's at a firmware level. It's not in the drivers, not in the operating system. It's actually at the firmware level of the device. And so this Google engineer notified all the vendors throughout the world, Microsoft included, hey, you've got a problem and you need to fix it. So we kept it somewhat secret for quite some time. And then sometime in January, the engineer said, hey, I got to put this up and now we're ready to go. So on that day that Spectre and Meltdown was announced, we in Surface pushed through Windows Update for Business down to every single Surface device that was taking an automatic update to fix the firmware on the processor. And we were able to do that because of our ability to have a tightly joined system that from chip to the cloud, how do we actually drive that? And so when we're looking at devices like this Surface Laptop 3, we can actually say on the device that if I was to turn it on and be able to look into the device, I have a UEFI that I can actually go in before the boot cycle and actually come in and manage myself. Now, what was interesting is at the time of Ignite this past year, we actually announced that we have the ability through Intune to manage that UEFI. So pre-boot, we can actually use Intune to have management down to that UEFI level. And so, Stephen, it'd be great if I could actually walk you through that particular case as to how we can do that with Microsoft Endpoint Manager and be able to show that.
Yeah, that would be great because we have heard from a lot of folks that we work with the government, and I want to make sure that depending on location or what's happening, that people can't turn on their camera in certain locations or things like that, and being able to manage that is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. The value of being able to turn off something at the firmware level, then you boot the operating system. If you go into Device Manager, what you would find is that the device or the camera doesn't even show up. It's not even registered because there was no finding of it. It didn't instantiate itself in order to show up into the device.
Absolutely. So can you walk us through that? And I also would love for you to talk a little bit more about Microsoft's open source development of this UEFI and what that means to IT pros and the future of devices as well a little bit.
Right. Well, for that, what I find most interesting is that we are making this open source, this UEFI open source, that other manufacturers or creators of UEFIs could actually adopt this as a best in breed. It's kind of like what Microsoft did with Chromium, right? We said, this is the best in breed of operating systems. Let's put it into our browsers. Let's put it into our Edge browser. In this particular case, we think of this because of its tight integration into Windows Update and the ability to manage it through MDMs like Intune, or in the future, AirWatch, Mobile Iron, and the other MDMs that are out there. It will give us a capability to essentially share throughout the greater Windows 10 community how you can manage devices all the way down to the firmware level. So at this point, point, I'd love to go ahead and dive into Microsoft Endpoint Manager and actually give you a walkthrough of how this actually takes place. You'll see it on the screen, but I'm actually going to do it on this Surface Hub that's behind me. So I have the luxury of having a Surface Hub at home, but I actually give a lot of demos here at home. So it's actually it's more like, hey, yes, you can bring a Surface Hub home, but you've got to do demos night and day. And I said, okay, that's a fair trade. So
it's also awesome if you have a remote birthday or holiday. That's really going to come in handy. So
right, exactly. So within here, I am showing at this point Microsoft Endpoint Manager within Intune. And what I want to come back to is actually the Microsoft Intune main page. And I'm going to come into device configuration, and then I'm going to come into profiles. And so what I really want to do is create a new profile, essentially a new policy that I could push down onto my Azure Active Directory security group of devices that I've created. This Azure AD security group, in this case, is a bunch of Surface devices that I have in a cluster that I have deployed as demo devices. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Create New Profile. And then I'm going to select platform. Of course, the one platform to choose and the only one to choose would be Windows 10, of course. Why would you choose anything else? But towards that, right now, this platform, this particular policy is only available for the Surface devices until others adopt this UEFI. If I select profile, then I could choose device firmware configuration interface. And so I go ahead and tap on that, and now I hit create. And so I can give this a name. So I could say, hey, I really want this to be maybe a webcast test. And so now I go ahead and hit next. And now what you'll see is there's a bunch of different settings. These are the settings that if I was on a Surface device and I held down the power button and the volume up button, and before I powered on the device and it kicked into UEFI, these would be the settings that I could configure. What I can do in this case is actually configure them through Intune. And so some of the more interesting ones is I have the ability to disable the camera. I could also disable the ability to boot from USB. So if I disable the ability to boot from USB, that establishes an early version of what we think of as tenant lockdown, meaning that if you have disabled the ability for your users to boot from USB, that means that if the device was ever lost or stolen, then they would not be able to reinstall or reimage the device from a USB stick. So there's an advantage there of being able to say now the device is just worth the parts that are in it. It's not worth the actual piece. Right. And within Intune, you could actually remotely reset the device even if the device was ever lost or stolen. So you could actually erase the operating system off the device. So there's security built into those particular pieces. But there's an advantage there now that also we found that even for, say, school kids, maybe you don't want your kid to go out onto Reddit and say, how do you put Linux on a Surface device and be able to follow those instructions? This would prevent that from happening because now you have the ability to essentially lock down that experience. The final thing to point out would be is the one that says here, allow local users to change UEFI settings. If you go ahead and say only not configured settings, which is the default, that means that if I make any change myself as an administrator to the camera or the ability to boot from USB, it'll be grayed out on the user's side. So they won't even be able to override it if they are able to get into the UEFI on the device. So it'll be grayed out for them if I'm managing it myself. And so now I can essentially create this and then assign this particular policy to a group of Azure Active Directory security group and now have that deployed down onto a number of devices. Now, the real value here is that this is a policy that can be deployed through autopilot, being the idea that I can ship a device directly from my factory to my customer. And so that the very first time they turn on the device and the device registers itself, it's already pre-registered as an autopilot deployed device that you can do through Microsoft Partner Center, through your partners can do it, or you can do it through Intune and register the device yourself before you even receive the device. Then what happens is when the device is first turned on, it calls back to Microsoft. Microsoft checks to see if it's enrolled in the autopilot deployment service. And if it is, then it'll start kicking in and pushing down applications, policies, and settings to the device. This is all pre-login. This is all pre the ability to get to the actual desktop of your device. And so that means that before they even get to their desktop and go into Outlook or go into Word or PowerPoint, Excel, or whatever application they're going to use, the device is now locked into the tenant that owns it. So there's an advantage of essentially secure supply chain that allows that to happen, that says from the first time the device is turned on, all the way through to the first time they're actually using it, the device is now locked into that tenant that actually had purchased that device for the end employee. So there's real value there towards providing that.
Now, one of the things that's great because we build the device and the OS is there's not a whole separate process like there is when we look at our partners to update things like firmware. This can be done now through Windows Update. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It really goes back to the idea that anything from chip to the cloud on a Surface device can be provided through Windows Update. A lot of times on UEFI, on other vendor devices, you actually have to go out to a download page in order to get to the UEFI in order to update it, or other drivers in order to update it. On a Surface device, every component from the firmware all the way through the drivers, all the way up through the operating system is all maintained through Windows Update. The cool thing on if you have a Surface device, if you've ever noticed that when it does do an update, sometimes it'll shoot a colored bar across the bottom of the screen.
Right.
That means it's actually updating portions of the firmware, and each color that it shows is a different component of that firmware, whether it's the processor or the touchscreen or the UEFI itself. So it's kind of interesting to be able to see that, but also know that your device is highly secured, because no matter whether a vulnerability was detected through the intelligent security graph of Defender ATP, whether it was found in the operating system or the drivers or all the way down to the firmware level, on a Surface device, you're covered from essentially chip to the cloud.
This is great. Frank, where can folks go to learn more about this?
Well, we make it pretty easy. If you go out to surface.com, all the information is actually out there, but a big one is also on Docs. So if you go out to docs.microsoft.com/surface, you'll see a full bevy of IT Pro based information on how to secure, manage, and deploy your devices.
Cool. I've gotten a few questions in on Twitter. So Sanyaha, I want to ask you a question first. I'm working with a very limited budget. Is there a really good low-cost headset and camera that you would recommend?
There's a ton of options out there right now. There's a lot that are on back order, so it's going to be, I think, you're going to have to look and see what's available. Again, our partners, Jabra, Poly, Logi, they all offer great low-cost options for headsets. And then in terms of the certified cameras, it's really the Yealink and the Logi cameras that we offer in terms of certified devices. Again, you're going to have to see which ones are available, because they are really selling out pretty quickly. The other thing I will say, though, is if they are sold out, we are working with our partners, and we know that they're really trying to increase production. So keep checking back, because they may have lots coming up in early June, or every couple of weeks. So if you can't find something now, you can definitely see if they've got a new lot coming on the market in short order.
And I know that many of these companies also have partner programs that companies can join, that depending on how many they buy can also give them discounts on those as well, correct?
Yeah, actually, Yealink's got a great offer right now where if you buy a couple of peripherals, you can get those discounted. They've also got an offer for the collaboration bar, which I talked about, which is that all-in-one compute, audio, video device. And then the ThinkSmart, the Lenovo ThinkSmart IP phone, which just came on the market, that's actually really affordable when you think about a video phone. It's running at about $350, and that's the MSRP. So there's a lot of great options out there. You just got to dig a little bit right now because of a lot of back orders.
Awesome. Alex, question for you. Is there a fave SCPC that you like, and when is the best time of year to look to buy these? Because he was saying, I just bought a bunch and then new stuff's constantly coming out. Is there like a cycle for this? So I'm getting the best deal either on some previous models or getting the latest and greatest and not somewhere in between.
Great question. That's part of the fun and the challenge of being kind of a technophile, I guess, is that it feels like whenever you buy something, something also comes out afterwards. So my philosophy with that is that you should not necessarily try to wait, because there's always going to be things on the horizon. But what I would say is that all of the secured core PCs that are out there now are really amazing value for what you get. I've personally used a huge swath of them, so picking one is kind of like picking a favorite child. But I've always been a big fan of kind of the Lenovo X1 Carbon. So if I had to pick one, that might be one that would be my daily driver. So great question. I think you should peruse the website, the aka.ms/secured core PC. You can see a list kind of all the different ones there. Click into them, get more information, see which one fits your style, and move from there.
Are you a fan of the nub on the Lenovo?
I am, yeah. I know it's kind of controversial, but you know, it feels good. I like it.
They just came out with an external keyboard that has the nub on it for those people who love the nub. I find that great.
Nice. Very nice.
Awesome. Frank, if folks have their PCs that are either sleeping or even off, what happens as you push out some of these policies that we have with, you know, that we add, and when will those get put in?
One of the interesting things that's come around within Windows 10 in the last few years is the idea of modern sleep or modern standby. And so that's essentially in essence where if you hit the power button on a Surface device or other devices that support modern standby, the device doesn't shut down. It actually goes into a deep sleep state where it stays powered on, but it can still receive messages. It can still receive emails, but it can also still receive Windows updates to it. And the reason that that's important would be, imagine you're in Europe and it's 1 in the morning, and I don't know quite the time difference to say Australia, but it's probably daylight in Australia if it's nighttime, say somewhere in Europe.
Right.
And so if we were to find an issue through the intelligent security graph, we could essentially roll in an update to push it overnight to a device that's in modern standby within Europe. So it's kind of an interesting way of being able to provide updates to the end users.
That's awesome. And I know other companies like Dell have their own systems where if the device is off that they can push out. So it's definitely well worth looking into to take a look at that. But, you know, with Surface, we're trying to make it easy for you as possible. And all of these are great. But the bottom line is there's some great new hardware to help your folks collaborate and work together more securely, easily, and really allow them to do what's important, especially these days with these times, which is be able to look at each other face to face, be able to collaborate, be able to work together, and to be able to have a connection. And that's really the goal as we do this stuff. I want to thank all of our guests today. Don't forget to go to aka.ms/enable remote work to see previous webcasts as well as a repeat of this one. And if you have any ideas for future shows or guests that you would like to see, products you'd like to learn more about, please find me on Twitter at Stephen L. Rose. That's with a PH. Tag me. I'd love to hear your feedback on these episodes and what you'd like to see in the future. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.